The unexpected gift. The cold metal floor of the space station was stained with blue alien blood. Captain James Carter knelt beside his dying friend, Commander Vector, watching as the alien gasped for breath. Vector's deep purple skin had turned pale, his four-fingered hands trembling. "You must take it," Vector whispered, shoving a small glowing box into James's hands. James hesitated. "What is this?" Vector coughed, blood dripping from his lips. "My daughters. Protect them." James frowned. "Daughters? What are you talking about?" Vector grabbed James's arm, his grip surprisingly strong for a dying man. "You are their guardian now. Their husband." James froze. "Wait, what?" Before he could get an answer, Vector's eyes glazed over. His body twitched once, then fell still. The great warrior, the alien who had saved James's life many times, was now dead. James sat back, his mind racing. Husband, guardian, daughters? None of this made sense. He looked down at the glowing box in his hands. Slowly, he pressed the release button. With a soft hum, the box opened, revealing a holographic contract in an alien language. James tapped his wrist device, and the translator activated. Marriage contract. The bearer of this document is now legally bonded to HFY and Loon, daughters of Commander Vector. As per the ancient law of the Tarvek royal bloodline, the guardian must assume responsibility for their future. James stared at the glowing text, his heartbeat pounding. This has to be a mistake. Suddenly, his communicator buzzed. Distress signal detected. Origin: HFY and Loon. James cursed under his breath. This was bad. Really bad. He had no idea what he had just gotten himself into, but one thing was clear. Vector's daughters were in danger. He jumped to his feet, gripping the box tightly. Whatever this was, he owed it to his friend to at least find them. The hunt begins. James rushed to his ship, the Iron Fang, a battle-worn but reliable freighter. As soon as he entered, he activated the tracking system. "Show me the distress signal." A holographic map appeared, displaying a red blinking dot on a planet called Zorxal 5. James groaned. Zorxal 5 was a lawless world, filled with bounty hunters, smugglers, and warlords. If Vector's daughters were there, it meant someone wanted them dead. Before James could even lift off, alarms blared. Incoming transmission. A rough voice crackled over the speakers. "Human, we know you have the contract. Hand over the girls, and we might let you live." James clenched his jaw. "Sorry, I don't even have them yet." The voice laughed coldly. "Then we'll take you instead." James barely had time to react before laser blasts struck his ship. The impact shook the entire cockpit, warning lights flashing red. He slammed the thrusters forward, sending the Iron Fang shooting into space. Through the rear cameras, he saw 3 enemy ships in pursuit. James gritted his teeth. Great, just great. A dangerous chase. The enemy ships were faster and more advanced, their blue plasma cannons lighting up the darkness of space. James dodged and weaved, avoiding blasts by mere inches. He activated the ship's autoguns, returning fire. One of the enemy ships exploded, but the other 2 kept chasing. James checked the warp drive. It needed 30 more seconds to activate. Come on," he muttered. A sudden explosion rocked the ship. A missile had hit the left engine. Sparks flew as warning systems screamed at him. 10 seconds until warp. The enemy ship lined up for a final shot, ready to destroy him. 5 seconds. James yanked the controls, sending the Iron Fang into a dangerous spin. The enemy's blast missed by inches. 1 second. A loud boom echoed through the cockpit as the warp drive activated, sending James into hyperspace. He collapsed into his seat, breathing hard. "That was close," he muttered. His hand still held the glowing box, the contract inside. He looked at it again. HFY and Loon. His responsibility now. James had no idea who they were, But he knew one thing. Whoever wanted them dead was willing to kill him too. And he wasn't about to let that happen. Escape and the truth. James Carter gripped the controls of the Iron Fang, his heart still pounding from the battle. The ship's warp drive hummed as it propelled him through hyperspace, but he knew he wasn't safe yet. The bounty hunters would be tracking him, and worse, he still had no idea what he had just signed up for. His fingers tightened around the glowing box that Vectar had given him. Inside was the marriage contract, binding him to 2 alien daughters he had never met. "This is insane," he muttered. But there was no turning back now. The distress signal was still blinking on his screen. Thyra and Loon were in danger, and he had to get to them first. Landing on Xol 5, a lawless world. As the ship exited hyperspace, James saw Xol 5 looming ahead, a planet covered in dark storm clouds, its surface a mix of desert wastelands and neon-lit criminal cities. This place was a haven for outlaws. No laws, no rules. If someone was hunting Vectar's daughters, this was the perfect place to hide or die. James guided the Iron Fang toward the signal, which was coming from a massive, rundown city known as Grimbold. The moment he landed in the spaceport, he locked the ship's doors. He wasn't about to lose the Iron Fang to some street thug. The air smelled of oil, smoke, and desperation as he stepped out. Around him, aliens of all kinds moved through the crowded streets, some selling weapons, others whispering about bounties and murder deals. He had to move fast. Meeting Thyra and Loon, James followed the distress signal into a dark alley, his hand resting on his blaster. The signal led him to a small, abandoned warehouse. Inside, he found 2 alien women, one standing tall and calm, the other holding a knife to his throat the moment he stepped in. "Who are you?" the younger one growled. James didn't flinch. "Name's James Carter," he said. "Your father sent me." The girl pressed the blade harder. "My father is dead." The other woman, taller and more composed, touched her shoulder. "Loon, wait." Loon hesitated, then lowered the knife, but her glare didn't soften. The taller woman stepped forward. "I am Thyra, first daughter of Vectar. And this is my sister, Loon." James exhaled. "Good. Then let's get out of here before." Boom. The warehouse exploded as bounty hunters stormed in, blasters firing. "Too late," Loon hissed. "Fight or die." James dove for cover, pulling out his blaster. The bounty hunters spread out, trapping them inside. "We need to move." Thyra yelled, activating a blue energy shield to block incoming shots. James fired back, hitting one bounty hunter in the chest. But there were too many of them. Loon leaped into action, her knife slicing through the air as she took down 2 enemies with shocking speed. "Not bad," James muttered. "Shut up and shoot," she snapped. They fought their way to the exit, but more hunters poured in, surrounding them. Then one of the bounty hunters stepped forward, a massive reptilian alien, his scales black as night. "You cannot escape," the alien growled. "The contract belongs to the Empire now. Hand over the girls." James tightened his grip on his weapon. "Yeah, over my dead body." The reptilian grinned, showing razor-sharp teeth. That was the plan. He lifted his hand and pressed a detonator. An unexpected savior. The ground shook as explosions ripped through the city. But instead of collapsing, the ceiling burst open, revealing a hovercraft swooping in. A robotic voice echoed from the sky. "Target acquired. Extraction initiated." A grappling hook shot down, snatching James, Thyra, and Loon just as the warehouse collapsed in flames. James looked up, stunned, as they were pulled into a mysterious ship hovering above the city. Loon spun toward him, pointing her knife at his face again. "What kind of trap is this?" James held up his hands. "I have no idea who just saved us." Thyra turned to the pilot, a hooded figure with glowing red cybernetic eyes. "Who are you?" The pilot removed their hood, revealing a human woman. "Name's Captain Raylan Voss," she said with a smirk. "And you all owe me big time." Forced alliance and enemies closing in. James Carter had seen a lot of crazy things in his years as a space trader, but nothing quite like this. Being kidnapped by a human pirate right after escaping a bounty hunter ambush, with 2 alien princesses who were apparently now his wives. The hovercraft shot through the night sky, dodging plasma blasts from the bounty hunters below. Smoke and fire raged through the ruined streets of Grimhold, but James's mind was focused on only one thing: who was Captain Raylan Voss? And why did she save them? He was about to get answers. A human among aliens. The hovercraft landed on a hidden airship, a heavily modified warship hovering just above the storm clouds of Zorixol 5. The second James, Thyra, and Loon were pulled inside. The doors sealed shut. Raylan Voss, the human pirate, leaned against the control panel, smirking at James. "You owe me for that one, Carter." James frowned. "I don't even know who you are." Loon crossed her arms, glaring. "And why should we trust you?" Raylan chuckled. "You shouldn't, but right now I'm the only one keeping you from getting your heads blown off." Thyra, calm as ever, stepped forward. "What do you want?" Raylan's smirk faded. "Not what I want. It's what the Empire wants." She pressed a button, and a holographic screen appeared. A transmission from the Imperial High Council played. "The fugitive daughters of Vectar must be captured at all costs. The human James Carter is to be taken dead or alive. The bounty has been increased to 1 million credits." James exhaled sharply. "Well, that explains the bounty hunters." Thyra's expression darkened. "The Empire is moving faster than we thought." Raylan tilted her head. "You still don't get it, do you, Carter?" She pointed at Thyra and Loon. "These 2 aren't just royal heirs. They are the last of the Tarvek bloodline. The only ones who can challenge the Empire's rule." James rubbed his temples. "Great. So not only am I married to 2 alien princesses, but now I'm a walking target for an entire galactic empire." Loon scoffed. "You were a target the second you accepted our father's gift." James sighed. "I didn't accept anything. He died in my arms and threw it at me." Thyra stepped forward, placing a hand on his shoulder. "You saved my father in his final moments. That makes you one of us now." James glanced between the 2 sisters. Thyra, calm and noble, and Loon, angry but fierce. He wasn't sure if this was a blessing or a curse. The Empire's pursuit. Before they could argue further, alarms blared inside the ship. "Incoming vessels," a robotic voice announced. Raylan cursed. "They found us fast. They must have planted a tracker on your ship." James clenched his fists. "Damn it. We need to move." Raylan grabbed the controls. "Brace yourselves." The ship lurched forward, diving into the storm clouds as Imperial warships broke through the atmosphere. Red laser cannons fired, barely missing their hull. Inside, Loon grabbed James's arm, steadying herself. "If we get captured, they'll kill you first," she muttered. James smirked. "Nice to know where I stand." Loon's glare softened, just for a second, before she looked away. "A risky plan." Raylan spun the ship hard, dodging plasma fire. "We can't outgun them. We need a new plan." James's mind raced. They couldn't outrun them. They couldn't fight them. There was only one option. "We go to the one place they won't follow us," James said. Thyra's eyes widened. "You can't mean." James grinned. "Oh, I do." Loon frowned. "What are you talking about?" James turned to Raylan. "Set a course for the forbidden planet, Vilcarus Prime." The room went silent. Raylan's expression hardened. "Are you out of your damn mind?" Thyra looked uneasy. "No one goes to Vilcarus Prime and returns alive." James leaned against the wall. "Exactly. Which is why the Empire won't follow us there." Raylan hesitated, then grinned. I like the way you think, Carter. All right, let's do it. She punched the coordinates into the ship's nav system. The ship jumped to hyperspace, leaving the Empire behind. For now, a growing connection. As they traveled, James found himself sitting beside Loon in the observation deck. The stars outside streaked past like silver lines. You're really going through all this trouble for us? Loon asked, her voice quieter than usual. James shrugged. Your father saved my life once. I'm just returning the favor. Loon studied him, as if trying to understand something. You're different from most humans, she admitted. James chuckled. That a compliment? Loon smirked slightly. Don't get used to it. For the first time since meeting her, James saw something in Loon's eyes that wasn't anger or distrust. Maybe, just maybe, she didn't hate him as much as she pretended to. The forbidden planet and a deadly test. The ship trembled as it dropped out of hyperspace, the blue tunnel of light collapsing into the vast emptiness of space. Directly ahead, shrouded in thick, swirling purple storm clouds, was Valkyris Prime, the forbidden planet. James Carter had seen plenty of dangerous places, but this was something else. Lightning cracked across the atmosphere, illuminating jagged black mountains and a vast ocean of mist below. There were no signs of cities, no visible life, only a planet that wanted to be left alone. Loon, standing beside him at the cockpit window, scoffed. So this is your brilliant plan? To land on a cursed planet? James smirked. You're welcome to jump out if you've got a better idea. Thyra, more thoughtful, studied the ancient symbols faintly visible on the planet's surface. I've heard of Valkyris Prime before. It was once the home of the Veltian Order, an ancient warrior race that vanished thousands of years ago. Raylan Voss, piloting the ship, leaned back in her chair. Yeah, and rumor has it, they didn't just vanish. Something wiped them out. James folded his arms. Perfect. Let's land. Loon groaned. I hate you. The descent into the unknown. As the ship pierced the storm clouds, turbulence shook the hull violently. Warning alarms blared, but Raylan kept a steady grip on the controls. Suddenly, the cockpit lights flickered. A strange whispering sound filled the ship. Loon stiffened. Did you hear that? James frowned. What? Zyra's hand tightened around her belt. It's voices. Raylan cursed under her breath. Great. First, an empire wants to kill us. Now, we've got a haunted planet. The ship finally broke through the clouds, revealing the surface. A massive ruined city, its black stone towers crumbling under centuries of decay. James whistled. Looks cozy. Raylan landed the ship in what looked like an old courtyard, surrounded by statues of towering warriors in battle armor. Their faces were hidden, their weapons raised as if frozen mid-fight. The second the landing gear touched the ground, the whispering stopped. The silence was even worse. The trial of the ancients. James and the others stepped out, the ground beneath them solid but unnervingly cold. Zyra examined the carvings on the statues. This was a training ground, she said, running a hand over the ancient stone. The Veltian warriors were tested here. James glanced around. Tested how? Before she could answer, the ground trembled. One by one, the statues began to move. Their stone eyes glowed blue, and a deep rumbling voice filled the air. To walk the path of Valkyris, one must prove their worth. The statues stepped forward, drawing massive stone weapons. Raylan backed up. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. James instinctively drew his blaster, but Zyra grabbed his wrist. No, if you attack, we fail. Loon's fists clenched. Then how do we win? The voice echoed again. The trial is simple. Survive. Then the statues attacked. The fight for survival. James barely dodged a massive stone hammer as it smashed into the ground beside him, cracking the courtyard floor. Raylan rolled out of the way, drawing her energy knives. Oh yeah, we're gonna die. Loon, always eager for a fight, leaped toward one of the statues, dodging a sword swing and climbing onto its back. She tried to stab it, only for her blade to bounce off harmlessly. "They're too strong," she shouted. James ducked another attack, thinking fast. If we can't beat them, maybe we outsmart them. Zyra's eyes widened. Of course, the Velshen warriors weren't just fighters. They were strategists. James grabbed Loon's arm and pulled her back. "We don't have to fight. We have to prove we can lead." One of the statues swung its sword straight at James. Instead of dodging, he stood his ground. "Stop!" he shouted. To his shock, the statue froze mid-strike. The others halted, their glowing blue eyes flickering. A heavy silence filled the air. Then, the voice returned. "You have chosen the path of wisdom. The trial is complete." The statues stepped back, returning to their original positions. The blue glow faded from their eyes. Raylan exhaled. "Well, that was fun. Let's never do that again." James turned to Zyra. "So, do we get a prize for passing?" Zyra pointed ahead. "Yes. That." At the far end of the courtyard, a hidden door rumbled open, revealing a staircase leading deep underground. Loon crossed her arms. "This better not lead to more stone warriors." James grinned. "Only one way to find out." Secrets of Valkyris Prime. The underground passage led them into a massive chamber, its walls covered in glowing blue symbols. At the center stood an ancient artifact, a floating crystal sphere, pulsing with power. Zyra's breath caught. "This is it. The heart of Valkyris." James frowned. "And what does it do?" Zyra hesitated. "Legend says it holds the true history of the Tarvek bloodline." Raylan raised an eyebrow. "And why is that important?" Zyra met James's gaze. "Because if we unlock its secrets, we may find the one thing powerful enough to stop the Empire." Loon stepped forward. "Then let's open it." She reached out, and the second her fingers touched the crystal, the chamber exploded with light. Visions flooded James's mind. Images of a great war, a hidden truth about the Tarvek royal family, and a name whispered through the void. The Empire was built on a lie. James's eyes snapped open, his heart pounding. What did we just see?" he breathed. Zyra's face was pale. "The Empire isn't just after us because of our bloodline. They're after us because we hold the key to bringing them down." Loon clenched her fists. "Then we make them pay." James nodded, determination hardening in his chest. It was no longer just about survival. It was about starting a revolution. The war begins. The chamber still pulsed with energy from the heart of Valkyris, the ancient artifact that had just rewritten everything James Carter thought he knew about the Tarvek bloodline, the Empire, and the war that had shaped the galaxy. James staggered backward, gripping his head as the vision still echoed in his mind. Starships burning, a throne stolen, a betrayal so deep it had rewritten history itself. Loon steadied herself against a stone pillar, breathing heavily. Did we all see that? Zyra, her face pale, nodded slowly. The Empire wasn't always the rulers of the galaxy. They were the ones who overthrew the true rulers, the Tarvek family. Raylan Voss let out a low whistle. "Well, that explains why they want you two dead. You don't just have royal blood. You've got a claim to the throne." James exhaled, trying to push down the weight of the revelation. He had known Vectar was important, but this meant the Empire had spent centuries erasing the truth, and now he and the sisters had the proof to expose them. Unfortunately, there was one big problem. "They're not just gonna sit back and let this happen," James muttered. "If the Empire realizes we know the truth." A deep rumbling sound interrupted him. Raylan's eyes widened. "But, guys." The stone walls shook violently. Dust and debris fell from above. And then, a cold, mechanical voice echoed through the chamber. "Fugitives detected. Engaging elimination protocol. Ambush at Valkyris Prime. The chamber erupted in chaos as the entrance exploded inward, sending stone fragments flying. Through the smoke, black armored soldiers stormed in, Imperial Death Troopers, the Empire's most elite execution force. Raylan dove for cover, drawing her blaster. I knew it was too quiet. James yanked out his gun, firing back. His shots hit the trooper's armor, but the soldiers barely flinched, their enhanced body shields absorbing the impact. We can't win this fight head-on, Zyra shouted, throwing up an energy barrier to block incoming fire. We need to escape. Loon, always eager for a fight, lunged forward, slicing through a trooper's helmet with her plasma knife. The soldier collapsed, but 3 more took his place. This is bad, James growled, ducking behind cover. Zyra reached for the heart of Valkyris, but the second her hands touched it, a shockwave burst outward, sending everyone flying. Raylan crashed into a pillar, groaning. Okay, note to self, don't touch the magical artifact of doom. James rolled to his feet, his head spinning. The Empire had sent their best assassins to take them out. If they didn't find a way out, they were dead. Then, something unexpected happened. The heart of Valkyris hummed, and suddenly, the statues in the chamber came to life again. But this time, they weren't attacking James and his team. They were attacking the Empire. The battle turns. The stone warriors moved with inhuman speed, their ancient weapons cutting through the Imperial troopers like paper. One trooper tried to fire, but a statue crushed him with a massive stone hammer. Another soldier screamed as a blade impaled him through the chest. Raylan stared. Okay, that's terrifying, but I'll take it. Zyra pulled James up. This is our chance. The heart recognizes us. It's protecting us. James didn't need to be told twice. Then let's get the hell out of here. They sprinted toward the exit, dodging blaster fire as the Imperial soldiers fought desperately against the unstoppable stone warriors. Just as they reached the outer courtyard, a massive explosion ripped through the ruins. James turned back in time to see one of the Empire's warships descending from the sky. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. The Empire unleashes a superweapon. The warship hovered above the ruins, its engines humming with deadly energy. On the side of the hull, the insignia of the Empire gleamed under the stormy sky. A deep, commanding voice boomed from the speakers. You cannot run, fugitives. Surrender the royal hairs now, or Valkyris Prime will be reduced to dust. Loon growled. They wouldn't dare. James glanced at the ship's weapon systems. His gut twisted. Oh, they would. A massive plasma cannon began charging, enough firepower to wipe out the entire planet's surface. Raylan turned to James. So, Captain Genius, got any bright ideas? James exhaled. Just one. He turned to Zyra. The heart of Valkyris. You said it's powerful. Can it do something about that? Zyra hesitated. It's ancient technology. But if I can interface with it, maybe. Raylan clapped her hands. All right, Nerd Squad, get to work. Loon and I will hold off the troopers. Loon shot James a look. Try not to die. James smirked. You too. Then the battle truly began. Final stand at Valkyris Prime. James and Sarah sprinted back into the chamber, dodging blaster fire. The stone warriors were still fighting, but the Imperial forces weren't slowing down. At the center of the ruins, the heart of Valkyris pulsed brighter, as if sensing their desperation. Zyra placed her hands on it, her eyes glowing blue as she connected with its energy. Outside, Loon and Raylan fought side by side, cutting down troopers while dodging plasma blasts. The warship's plasma cannon was almost fully charged. James grabbed Zyra's shoulders. We're out of time. Zyra's voice came out distant, almost robotic. I see the code. I see the power. I can rewrite it. James clenched his fists. Then do it now. Zyra let out a sharp cry, and suddenly, The heart of Valkyris exploded in a wave of energy, sending a shockwave through the planet. The warship above trembled, its systems shutting down instantly. Inside the ship, alarms screamed as the Empire's officers lost control of their systems. Warning. Critical system failure. Initiating emergency evacuation. Then the ship plunged from the sky, crashing into the ruins in a massive fireball. Victory, but at a cost. As the dust settled, the battlefield was silent. The Empire's forces were gone. The heart of Valkyris had saved them, but at a cost. Kazira collapsed, her body limp from the strain. James caught her before she hit the ground. "Hey, stay with me." She opened her eyes weakly. "We won." James looked at the burning wreckage of the Imperial warship. "Yeah, for now." Loon stood beside him, watching the ruins. "They'll come back." James nodded. "I know." Raylan sighed. "Then we better start fighting back." James looked at Syra, then at Loon. He wasn't just protecting them anymore. He was leading a revolution. Betrayal and sacrifice. The ruins of Valkyris Prime were still smoldering from the battle against the Empire, the wreckage of their warship scattered across the ancient city like the bones of a fallen beast. James Carter stood at the edge of a collapsed temple, staring at the heart of Valkyris, now dim and silent. It had saved them, shutting down the warship, crippling the Empire's forces, but at a cost. Zyra lay weak and unconscious, her connection to the artifact draining her strength. Loon knelt beside her, her usually fierce expression softened with worry. "She's not waking up," she murmured. Raylan Voss, arms crossed, sighed. "We need to get off this rock before the Empire sends reinforcements." James knew she was right, but something felt off. They had won the battle, but why did it feel like the war was only just beginning? A dangerous alliance. They couldn't stay on Valkyris Prime. The Empire knew where they were. If they wanted to fight back, they needed supplies, weapons, allies, and James knew exactly where to get them. "There's only one place we can go," he said finally. Loon stood. "Where?" James's jaw tightened. "The Shadow Syndicate." Raylan's eyes widened. "Oh, hell no. You want to deal with the most dangerous criminals in the galaxy." James exhaled. "We don't have a choice." The Shadow Syndicate was a network of mercenaries, bounty hunters, and rogue warlords. They weren't loyal to the Empire, but they weren't allies either. They only cared about one thing, power, and James knew the perfect person to negotiate with. His old partner, his biggest mistake. Dane Valor, arrival at the Shadow Syndicate base. The journey took 3 days in hyperspace. Zyra was still weak, but recovering. Loon, surprisingly, hadn't argued much with James, maybe because she knew he was right. The Shadow Syndicate's base, Tython 7, wasn't on any official maps. It was a floating city of crime orbiting a dying red star. As the ship approached, massive cruisers and stolen warships hovered in the distance, their turrets locked on anyone foolish enough to approach. Raylan muttered, "I hate this place." James smirked. "That makes 2 of us." A mechanical voice crackled over the comms. "Identify yourself, or be vaporized." James leaned forward. "Tell Dane Valor that James Carter wants a word." A long silence. Then, "Docking Bay 6. Do not try anything stupid." James exhaled. "Well, that's a good sign." Loon narrowed her eyes. "Or a trap." James grinned. "Definitely a trap." The betrayal. Dane Valor was waiting in a dark hall lined with mercenaries, his signature black coat and cybernetic eye, making him look just as dangerous as James remembered. Well, Dane smirked. "Look who crawled back." James ignored the tension in the room. "I need weapons, ships, fighters." Dane chuckled. "And what do I get in return?" James tossed a data chip onto the table. "This has the location of an abandoned Imperial supply depot. Enough weapons to arm an army." Dane picked it up, scanning it. Interesting. For a moment, James thought the deal would work. Then, the doors slammed shut behind them. Dane's mercenaries drew their weapons. Loon's hand flew to her knife, but before she could move, dozens of Syndicate soldiers appeared, guns aimed at them. James clenched his jaw. "You sold us out." Dane smiled. "Nothing personal, Carter. The Empire paid me more." James's gut twisted. The Empire had been one step ahead. They must have known he'd try to seek allies. And now he had led his team into a death trap. Sacrifice and escape. Raylan whispered, "I really hate this plan." James whispered back, "It's not a plan if it's a disaster." Loon glared at Dane. "You're a coward." Dane laughed. "I'm a survivor." He turned to his men. "Take them." The mercenaries moved in. James acted fast. He grabbed a hidden flash grenade from his belt, throwing it down. A blinding explosion of light filled the room. Gunfire erupted. James tackled Loon, shoving her behind cover. Raylan slashed through a guard's throat, while Syra, still weak, raised her hands, sending a wave of blue energy that disabled their enemies' weapons. James fought his way toward Dane, but his old partner was already escaping through a side door. "Damn it," James cursed. Loon shouted, "We need to get to the ship." The halls were a war zone, bullets and plasma blasts filling the air as James and his team fought their way out. Then, Dane's voice echoed through the station speakers. "All Syndicate forces, kill them all." James gritted his teeth. They were officially the most wanted fugitives in the galaxy. A costly victory. They barely made it back to their ship. James was bleeding from a wound on his side, and Loon had taken a blast to her shoulder. As Raylan fired up the engines, Syra collapsed into a chair, exhausted. James sat beside Loon, who was wincing in pain but alive. She looked at him. That was the worst plan ever. James chuckled. "Yeah." He exhaled. "But we're still here." Raylan spun the ship out of the docking bay, dodging incoming missiles and laser fire. They barely escaped into hyperspace. But the victory felt hollow. They had no allies, no army, no way to fight back. And now, the Empire and the Shadow Syndicate were hunting them. Syra looked at James, her voice quiet. "What now?" James stared into the endless stars ahead. Then, his communicator buzzed. A message. From an unknown source. A single line of text appeared. "I can help you, but you must come alone." James's stomach tightened. It was a trap. But right now, he had no other choice.